Sorry about that. Now I'm recording. Okay, thank you. Thank you, AI assistant. Um, I figured now is the best time to host this workshop. I hope to, like I said, I'm recording it now for those who can't attend. And if this is successful, I hope to host it again in the future or semi-regularly so that um, everyone will get a chance to enjoy it. I'm utilizing another computer for my notes, so if you see me look off to the side, that is because I'm on a different um, laptop. All right. If everyone can introduce themselves in the chat, since there's nearly 20 of us, I think going around would take a lot of time away, and I want to make sure that we spend as much time going over what alt text is and also the writing exercises that we're going to be working on. And then also have time for any general conversation, comments, questions at the end. All right. Okay, so we're going to get started. Okay. All right. So first off, I want to acknowledge that alt text is poetry is not a concept that was created by me. It's created by Shannon Finnegan and Bojana Coklyat, both of whom are disabled artists and activists living in New York. They shared a mutual interest in how communities can move towards better access and more nuanced approaches to access. And so they work together to create this as a collaborative project. Alt Texas Poetry is open resource, it's open access. I'll be providing you all with a link to the website as well as to the workbook that anyone can use at any time. But the first time I did alt text, I found it a lot more enjoyable working together in group. So that's why we're here today. So the point of this workshop is to take away the focus on compliance. A lot of times when it comes to accessibility in general, not just alt text, a lot of the focus is on compliance, particularly with the American with Disabilities Act. However, uh, this workshop is asking us to think about if we think about access as something that can be creative and that is centering disability culture, and how can we make spaces and experiences that disabled people not only can access but also want to access. And also, accessibility is not just for disabled people, it's for everyone, because any one of us can be temporarily disabled or become disabled permanently at any point in time. So access is not something that should just be seen as for a different group of people. It is available and it should be available to everyone. So what is alt text? Alt text is an essential part of web accessibility, which is what Do It is focusing on right now. It is a system of text descriptions that's built into websites, which makes the content accessible to those who are blind, low vision, or have certain cognitive disabilities. They primarily access it through screen readers. Alt text has existed since the 1990s, but again, it's often overlooked or again understood just through the lens of compliance. Alt text is a written description of an image posted online. It could also be added to images embedded in digital documents, whether that's PDFs, Word documents, Google Docs, presentations, etc. And alt text is not visually displayed on a website. So if you aren't a website developer or a screen reader user, you mostly interact with alt text by writing it and adding it to your descriptions through designated fields. So currently in my UMBC, when you add an image, it does provide you with a little box that you can click where you can, as you're uploading an image, it has a box that says description, and that's where they would like for you to put your alt text. Um, and so when you're doing this, you're actually helping to make the internet a much more accessible place. So the purpose of this workshop is not to teach you how to write alt text, The primary intent is to make sure that alt text is on your radar. It's something that you think about, but you can think about it creatively, and also to think about a few questions that come up when translating images into text. And I hope that the exercises that we're going to do make clear that all accessibility practices are ongoing practice, learning, and is all about collaboration. Another thing to note is that the ideas around alt text is constantly shifting and changing all the time, and people have lots of different opinions about how to approach alt text. So please take all of this with a grain of salt, seek out alternate viewpoints, and feel free to disagree with anything that we discussed today. I do want to also point out that alt text and image descriptions are two phrases that you will hear often interchangeably. Um, Alt text is something that is written into like the metadata of an image. So I'll actually go back to the first image on my screen. So sometimes when you go to websites and you hover over an image, a little box will pop up. That is considered metadata. So sometimes the metadata is purely just the name of the file. So as an example, this photo here of the True Grit statue being with its nose rubbed. The name of the file, as you can find on the UMBC Flickr, is just fall underscore campus 16-7458.jpg. That doesn't really tell you anything about what the image is. Whereas the alt text that I added was a bronze statue of a dog named Gritty, also known as a very good boy, getting its nose rubbed for good luck. So that's an example of how you would often see alt text. Image descriptions are things that oftentimes you'll see on social media posts, so like Instagram. Um, so like you'll see someone post something on Instagram, there'll be a caption, but then at the bottom it'll say image description, and it's describing what the actual image is. Image descriptions aren't necessarily cannot be read with a screen reader. Again, that's what alt text is for. But again, the image description is an added layer to the accessibility process. So all alt text are image descriptions, but not all image descriptions are alt text, if that makes sense. Um, so again, the workshop is alt text as poetry. So there are three ideas from the world of poetry that have been found to be particularly helpful when writing alt text. The first is attention to language. What words are we using? What are the connotations? What is the tone of the writing? What is the voice? And how do these align with or contrast the tone and perspective of the image? Number two, word economy. While there are times for long and lavish description, alt text usually aims for brevity. For most images, one or two sentences will do. And poetry has a lot to teach us about how to pare down language and to create something that is expressive yet concise. And then the third point is experimental spirit. We have a lot to learn from poetry about being more playful and exploratory and how we write alt text. And this is not experimentation for experimentation's sake. We want a kind of experimentation that moves towards better and more nuanced accessibility for alt text users. Writing alt text can also be seen as a form of translation. You're translating visual information into text. And these are a few things that we can learn from the field of translation when creating alt text. First is that information is both gained and lost. Alt text won't describe all of the information in the image, but the act of describing can also add information that might not otherwise be gleaned just from looking at the image by itself. There's no single correct answer to alt text. You can ask 10 people to describe an image and you'll get 10 different descriptions. And we'll probably see that later today when we start to do the writing exercises. The same person might describe an image differently based on what's on their mind or what context they're writing for. Um, and you can gain a better understanding of the variety of ways to describe an image. That's a part of an ongoing work of honoring our craft as honing our craft as describers. And third point that we can take from translation is that it always involves creative decisions. Every time you describe an image, you are making a creative decision. What you describe, the order in which you describe it, as well as the language that you use. Let me just pause right there and finish and go through my notes one more time. Before we head into the writing exercises, does anyone have any questions or comments about anything that we've discussed so far? You can either type it in the chat or you can raise your hand and say it out loud. At any point in time, I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you, so feel free to stop and ask questions while we're going. And again, for those who just joined us, I'm looking off to the side here because I'm using my laptop as as a place for my notes. So forgive me for not directly paying attention right at the moment, but I just want to make sure I have I've gotten my points across before we head to our writing exercises. Okay. So it looks like there are 25 of you. Wow, that's really impressive, and I'm again glad that you all are here with us. So, normally the workshop requires you to divide up into teams of two. I think that's not going to be doable right now. So, um, what's going to happen is that there's four writing exercises total. You can do this writing on a piece of scratch paper you have with you or on, Word doc or whatever. Um, but we're all going to look at the same image and you all are going to write your own responses. Um, and this is just a warm up. And you're going to list things that are present in the image or related to the image. Um, Aim to write about 5 words. And then you're going to list descriptive words or adjectives that describe the image, part of the image or your response to it. How does it make you feel? What's the mood of the image? What are some associations that you have? And again, you're going to aim to write 5 words. So I'm going to show 2 pictures per exercise, and I'm going to give you all about a minute or two for each photo. And then after that, we're going to share, for those of you who are comfortable sharing, uh, what your um, what your alt text is for it. Okay, so some of the pictures, I had a lot of fun choosing these pictures, so they're some of them are a little wonky, so forgive me. Okay, this first image is one that we are all commonly see. So again, um, take a look at the image, and you are going to list things that are present and aim to write 5 words. And you're also going to do descriptive words of what the picture is currently conveying at this point in time. I'm going to give you all a minute or two for that image, and then we're going to move on to the next one. I will also share my alt text that I have already pre-written for these images as well. Okay. Make sure finish up your written comments about this image, and then we're gonna go on to the next one. Here's our second image for this writing exercise. Okay, so now we're getting ready to share. Who would like to share some of their writing for this image? Again, you can say it in the chat, or if you want to come onto mic, you can speak as well. Okay, we have diverse people smiling, wearing UMBC merch. Okay. Okay, group of you of four students laughing and smiling in UMBC attire, walking together on academic row in a sunny day. Cheerful students walking between buildings. Happy students of various skin tones laughing, walking down campus row. Students laughing, happy, talking campus. Four college students walking in campus, talking and laughing together. Campus, happy spring, community belonging. Group of students walking, enjoying the day. Four diverse students walking and smiling, wearing UMBC attire. This is all good. Great. So I see a lot of commonalities with the words that were chosen. A lot of people pointed out that people were smiling or laughing or pointing out the general demeanor of the folks in the photo. A lot of people pointed out the attire. A lot of people also pointed out the activity, whether the people were walking. Some of you were very specific about where they were walking, and whether they were walking in a row and it being sunny. So again, these are all, are there anything is there anything that people have written down that surprised anyone or something that they wouldn't think of pointing out? Again, you can write in the chat. What I wrote for this, I'll share what I wrote was a group of students wearing UMBC themed t-shirts are smiling and laughing while walking in a group. So that's what I wrote. Um, Debbie, you wrote spring. Is that like a word that you're using as a descriptive for the something that you hadn't thought of? Okay, yeah. Yeah, sometimes describing the weather outside is important. And we'll talk a little bit about later, but context sometimes does and sometimes doesn't matter depending on again who your audience is. Um, who you're describing it for and like what is the point of what is the intention behind your description matters. So for someone the weather outside might not be important, whereas for others it might be. um I did notice the only one person described the group as diverse. No, sorry, two people, one person. No, there's three. Okay, so three people kind of described the identity of, so no one described gender in terms, unless you're using diverse in terms of a diverse group across gender and race, so that can be applied. But only a couple of you pointed out the difference in race and or gender. um Someone specifically used skin tones, which is very interesting. That is something that you can point out. Yes, aiming for 5 words. Yes, thank you. um, Not in your main 5 words, but you noted academic sidewalk, brick buildings, tall trees. Yes, again, these are all things. Again, we'll talk a little bit later about there are some instances where a very long description is fine. But most of the time, again, if you're doing actual alt text where it's going to hover, where you're using the mouse to hover over, you don't want a whole paragraph popping up on the screen. In other instances where you're doing an image description, like on a social media post, you might actually want to write a much longer paragraph. It really depends on your mood and and again what you're aiming for. So yes, describing the background of an image is also really good. Um, Question, should it be complete sentence or just words for alt text? I would suggest it as a complete sentence, um, because what some people wrote were kind of just like search terms in a sense. I would suggest it as as a complete sentence. Essentially, you want to think of as you are describing this image to a person. That's how you should think of writing the alt text, is that you have an image with someone who is maybe blind or has low vision, and you are describing to them what the image is depicting. So you want to have a complete sentence. All right, so we're going to move on to the next photo. Would anyone like to share how they described this photo? Ooh, stoat. What is a stoat? That's a new word. Oh, that's another word for ermine. Okay. Okay. Oh, you guys had lots of things to say about this one. Okay, I'm going to read some of the ones. Okay, one person said, a small stoat standing on its hind legs in a mossy field. Um, we have one person who did the search terms. Weasel, brown fur, white belly, standing grassy field. A weasel standing on back legs in a green field looking straight ahead. Brown and white weasel standing in an evergreen field. A curious stoat or brown and white ferret stands on its hind legs amongst green grass. A ferret green forest floor standing on 2 legs. A meerkat stands upright amidst ground cover. Yeah, it's okay not to. For those who don't know, this is an ermine. This is considered an ermine, but also a stoat, which I just learned is another word for ermine. Um, a brown and white ferret staring at a camera looking cute. A cute brown ferret with a white belly on green foliage staring at you. Cute little animal standing up looking at camera with a green background of succulents. Yes, second language learner. Yes. To kind of, we're all second language learners. Alt text, I would say, is also a second language. A stoat, a type of weasel, stands upright on its back legs at attention in a field. Upright, alert stoat enjoying the budding greenery. A furry mammal stands on hind legs on a hillside. Ferret stretching curiously in nature. Oh, this is all great. I love some of the things that you all have said. So a lot of you were, unsure of the animal. So some of you said mammal, or ferret-like creature or weasel. You're in a general vicinity, so it's okay if you don't have the exact um name of the animal. Um, a lot of you described the color of the animal. A lot of you described the background, whether it be mossy or succulents. Some of you described uh, the what you perceive to be the expression that the stoat has, whether it being curious. Um, some of you even stated that like the animal's looking directly at you, so kind of directing it towards again the screen reader so that they are kind of experiencing the image in real time, like that there is an animal that is looking directly at you. um a lot of you called it cute. Again, yeah, cute is another way to describe it. um yeah, so are there any things that about other folks' descriptions that surprised you that you wouldn't have used for yourself? Some kind of critter, yeah. Some kind of critter also works just as well. I think we all can agree on that. So the description that I used is an upright ermine with a brown coat stands among a lush landscape. Now I said because I know where I got this picture from and like where this picture is, I actually said in my description where it is. I said that it stands among a lush landscape at Katmai National Park and Preserve. So I specifically put in there like where in the world this image was taken. You don't have to do that. Again, it depends on context and whether you feel as though that is relevant to your audience. Does anyone have any questions about that particular writing exercise? I think you all have been doing a great job, and you see how kind of fun it is, just kind of thinking of things to say. A lot of these images, this particular image comes from the National Park Service. I will say the National Park Service is really, really, really good at writing descriptions, image descriptions, for their images, captions in general. So if you ever want to see good examples of image description, I suggest taking a look at you can look at the General National Park Service site, but also Death Valley one is good. Um, a lot of them they're really good, especially when it comes to like animal photos. They like to describe the animals in pretty cute ways. No questions or comments about that exercise? All right, so we'll move on to the next one. Okay. So writing exercise number two. Oh, should we not use words that are someone's perspective? Cute. That is lining up right to our next exercise, which is subjectivity and audience. Um, Uh, I would say you can use words like cute. Um, Again, it kind of depends on the point of your description. If you're kind of wanting to convey this as like a playful thing, just like with the image that I showed, um, at the beginning of my slide where I described Gritty as a very good boy. I didn't need to put that in, but it's fun, and he is a very good boy. All dogs are very good boys and girls. So it's not necessary, but it kind of makes things fun and not just, this is the thing I'm describing, like the sky is blue. That could be sufficient as a description, but the whole point of this is being poetic and making things fun. Okay, so writing exercise number two, subjectivity and audience. So many people have advocated for describers to be as objective as possible, allowing the person engaging with the description to make their own subjective interpretation. However, there's been a lot of pushback on that idea, that objectivity should be a central goal of description. Objectivity is an incredibly elusive concept. Where is the line between fact and interpretation? As Georgina Klieg writes, do we say smile or do we say lips turned up at the corners? Both are describing the same exact thing, but both are describing it in two very different ways. The pretense of objectivity also plays into, oh, this is a very good point, Stephanie, that cute can be misleading sometimes. These animals are carnivorous, much feared by the rabbits in Watership Down. Yes, that is absolutely correct. Um, Again, though I think context matters. I will say that in one way that the National Park Service used that particular photo is that they were kind of talking about, yes, Cry for the Rabbits and Watership Down. Um, One thing that they kind of were describing that photo of, um, like describing them as like being vicious creatures. So again, they use the same picture, but in different ways, in different instances, they use a slightly different description. So I think again, the one photo doesn't have to have the same description every single time you use it. The question is a description of color irrelevant to a blind person? Sky is blue. Again, yeah, like Stephanie says, the blue sky can help interpret the weather, as to what kind of day it is. Also, again, alt text or is not screen readers, are not just for people who are completely blind. There are people who have low vision, so they can still see things, like color. Um, so again, it really kind of depends. I wouldn't use color unless it was relevant to what I am discussing. So there's a lot that I read about using color or using descriptions about texture of things. That's a whole separate thing that perhaps in future iterations I could go into. I kind of wanted just to give the basics right now. But yes, that is a very good point about using color as a descriptor for people that potentially um, are unable to see or determine what color is. Yeah, you can use it if it helps evoke a feeling or a mood, like cool or warm tones. So, again, the point of all this is that it's everything is really up to interpretation. The idea is that you are making an attempt to describe something. Like once I made a description, and I had someone comment on why do I describe someone's race in the photo. And I felt, well, it's very relevant for you to describe the race of this person because for a lot of people, their default when they envision a type of person that I'm describing is a white person or an able-bodied person or, any kind of quote unquote default standard person. So giving as much description of what the person is or what a color of something is I think can help a lot. That's a very good question and something to think about. Um, and I see a lot of people have responded directly to you, so thank you all for your input. Um, Again, objectivity often validates the perspective of white cis middle and upper class men while marking other perspectives as subjective. It's also unclear if an objective approach produces quality descriptions. Trying to be objective can also often lead to language that is precise and technical, and the resulting writing can be difficult to understand or actually contrast greatly, like what the image that you're trying to um, convey. So I've selected two photos that actually are going to help us with that. Um, so this next exercise, there's two steps to it. The first step is that you're going to describe this image as though you are a complete stranger who stumbled across it for the first time. Pretend you've never seen it before. Well, in this case, you haven't. You've never seen at least one of them before and have no context. And then the second time, you're going to describe it as if you're describing it to your best friend. Okay? So this first image is this artwork here. So I'm going to give you all a minute or two to describe what it is that this image is depicting. Okay, gonna move on to the second image. And if you aren't able to get to each point, because remember I gave you two kind of tasks. One was describe it as if you've never seen it before. The second is to describe it to your best friend. If you're unable to get to the second one, that's perfect. That's perfectly fine. Again, I'm going to give you all these exercises to take home, and you can practice. And I'll also share the slideshow with you, so you all can practice. So again, the main point is I just want you all to practice here with us in a group. All right, let's go back to the first image. Does anyone want to share what their descriptions were? And I will say that these two images are ones where it's an example where you can have a short description. Don't, and for this one, you don't have to. I should have prefaced this. For this one, you don't have to try to stick to the 5 words things again. Again, if your description goes over 5 words, that's perfectly okay. But there are some instances where because I have a short description for this, and I also have a longer description um, that I can go over. But if folks want to share their descriptions. Okay, aqua blue convertible sports car with a blonde male chatting with a blonde female wearing two-piece red swimsuit with white glasses. A woman in a swimsuit and sunglasses looking down at a person in a roofless car. Illustration of a blue sports car, blonde woman in a red bikini leaning down to talk to the blonde driver. Drawing of a person in a sports car with roof open talking to a woman in a bikini leaning on the car. Illustration of a vintage convertible with driver paused to chat with a bystander in swim attire on the side of the road. Art print of a man in a sports car talking to a woman in a bikini. Mid 20th century sports car driver chats with swimsuit clad woman with sunglasses. Woman in bikini chatting with the driver of a retro futuristic convertible. Well, that's a good description. Man in Corvette talking with a woman in a bikini and sunglasses standing by the car. A person in a bikini standing next to blue convertible talking to a maybe male driver. Is it okay to assume gender? I think in this instance, I think in instances of like an illustration or drawing, I think it's fine to assume gender. I think in other instances where it's like actual people, it's a bit more tricky unless you actually know who the person is. So yeah, I think the like Debbie says, it depends on the context. So in this instance, I think it's okay to assume gender. Um, Someone says some, someone assumed the hair cousin mother. No, that's a man. That is a man with that kind of mullet. I wouldn't. It's not a mullet, but yes, I understand why you think that is very much a mom haircut. Silverish convertible. The driver has short hair and a tank top, sitting next to the car is another blonde person wearing a red bikini talking to the driver. Yes. Okay, so I'll read you my short description of this, and then I'll read you the longer description. So the first description is, and unfortunately, you can't see this very well because this image is cropped, but on the back of the car, is actually a surfboard. Um, so, but what I first wrote is pale blue convertible car with a surfboard on back. Driver is a blonde man talking to a blonde woman in a red bikini. Um, and then my longer description is, oops, an illustrated pale blue convertible car, um, that has its top in profile view, has its top down and a surfboard rests on the rear end of the car. A blonde, light-skinned man wearing sunglasses turns sorry, uh, turns his head away from us to look at a light-skinned blonde woman standing on the far side of the vehicle, leaning on the windshield with a flirtatious smile. She is wearing nothing but a skimpy red bikini and large sunglasses. So that second description obviously has a lot more detail and is describing more about like the stance of the people and kind of maybe hinting as to what is happening in this picture. Like the woman has a flirtatious smile, so maybe they're flirting with each other. Um, One thing I noticed that some of you did pick up on is describing this image as an illustration. Why did you choose to do that? Yes, medium is an important context. Yep, it's important to note an artist's interpretation. Yes. Um, because if we just go off of my first description, which is pale blue convertible car with a surfboard, drivers in a car, you might think that I'm actually talking about real people. Um, it's an actual photo of something versus an illustration. Um, so yes. Were there any other things that people use or that I use that you didn't think about that surprised you about their descriptions? Vintage, yes. Trying to maybe indicate the how stylized it is, that it's maybe an older, if not the image is not older, like when it was made, but the art style is being older. Yeah. So again, none of your individual descriptions are wrong or incorrect. These are all sufficient and will get the job done. But again, this is just a way to help you think of maybe different ways or more creative ways in which to describe um, what it is you're talking about. And I intentionally wanted to choose things that weren't photographs to see if you all catch on to the idea of describing the medium in your alt text. Okay, we're going to go to the second image, which I feel might trip people up a little bit, but I'd like to see what some of your descriptions were for this. Wheelchair racer icon. Line art vector graphic of a person leaning forward with arms behind them in a racing wheelchair. Silhouetted icon of a person using a wheelchair. Wheelchair icon figure leaning forward. White icon of a person in a wheelchair in a dark blue background. Informational icon of a person in a wheelchair leaning forward, implying movement. A sign showing a person on a wheelchair pushing forward. White icon of a person in a wheelchair with a blue background. Okay, good. I'm glad that all of you indicated that it is an icon or a vector graphic, as Dustin said. That's much more specific to what it is, but yes. So I'm glad that you all indicated that. Yes. A lot of you all and some of you emphasized that the icon is meant to indicate movement as opposed to as opposed to just a wheelchair being static. Um, Most of you indicated the color of the line as well as the background of the image. So good. You all did a really good job. So my alt text, I mean my short one is blue icon of person in wheelchair and forward motion. So that's just a general description. If you want to longer description, I'll get to your question in a second, Melody. If you want a longer description, I wrote a blue rectangle features a blocky white line form representing a person in a wheelchair leaning forward with an arm extended back to show they are moving themselves forward without assistance. Again, the first one, just fine. straightforward to the point. The second one provides a lot more specific detail. Um, and but both are perfectly fine. Melody had a question about the last image. Is it okay to assume someone's age or how old they appear to be? Um, Again, I think it depends on context. Um, I think it's I think it's better to use like, are you saying like exact age or just like general like young, older, adult, child? Like I think using those words are fine. Um, I don't think you should like look at a photo and said, this 67-year-old man in a wheelchair, you don't know how the person is unless it's like a photo of them on their birthday and they have a birthday cake in front of them with their age on it. But I think for the most part, you want to say like if it's an adult, but you don't know if it's an older, someone that you would consider older, and also like older is relative to yourself. So I think just saying adult or child or children would suffice. Or in some you can sometimes use younger or older. Like I said, it really depends on context. But I think just generally using adult or child is where you want to go. Are there any yes. Katie has a good point. If you have access to the person the photo is of, it's best to get how they want to be described from them. We'll actually get to that point a little bit later, so thank you for bringing that up. Does anyone have any um, thoughts or questions or comments about how people describe this photo?
Can I just talk for 1 second? Because I'm better at words talking out loud.
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Anyways, I was watching this video and I learned that these icons came out in the 1980 Olympics
Mm,
for all the sports. So I actually thought that this was one of the Paralympic wheelchair race icons. And that
it
was when
could be.
yeah. So anyways, it was what it reminded me of and how they came out during that 80s Olympics and they were able to communicate things very quickly and effectively. It was just a
Hmm.
cool thing.
Yeah, I did notice that some of you specifically describe this person as racing. So yes, that you normally most of the times when you are looking, if you see an icon of like if you're parking in a parking lot and you see a sign for a wheelchair accessible space, you're not typically going to see this image of someone racing in a wheelchair. It's going to be someone static in a wheelchair. So yes, you are probably correct that this is probably from the Paralympics, and this is someone who is in a racing wheelchair. Um, but yeah. So, but again, I think not pointing out that it's a race that they're racing, I think is also perfectly um, fine as well. Yes, it can be seen as just an alternate to the static icon as opposed to specifically it being the racing one. Yes. Okay. Um, Sorry, my laptop is timed out. Okay. So we're gonna move on. So I just wanted to again reiterate that describing an image is inherently subjective. As you write, you are drawing on your own ways of seeing and making sense of things in the world. However, a description should aim to provide a clear understanding of an image to an intended audience. Again, the intended audience should also be in your mind when you're writing a description. Okay, writing exercise number 3, structure, length, and priorities. Um, Oh, you want to do how would you describe it to your best friend? Yeah, if you have it, how would you describe it to your best friend? We can do that as well. You can do it for any image, um, any of the images. Or are you asking me how I would describe it to my best friend? Oh, so this first image, I would say it's um a white dude trying to holler at a white lady on the beach. He's about to go surfing. That's how I would describe it to my friend. But that may not necessarily be the best description for a professional setting. But you see how it's different. The two dynamics are different. One is more professional. One is like I'm just describing this image to my friend. Um, and then for this one, I don't. This one I wouldn't have specifically a much different description than the one I described, which is a white icon depicting someone using a wheelchair on a black background. But yes, thank you for asking that. Yeah, that's the reason why I chose this image because of the activity that's taking place in the image. Again, some people could just see it as someone talking, some people could see it as flirting, things like that. Okay, so writing exercise number three, structure and linking the priorities. Again, we're all going to work with the same images. You're going to write a single description, a single sentence to describe the image. The sentence should capture whatever you think is most important about the image. And then you're going to write a second sentence about the second most important thing in or about the image, and write a third sentence about the third most important thing. So I'm going to give you all a bit more time. I'm going to give you all 5 minutes per image. So again, you're going to write three different sentences. The first one is what you think is the most important thing that someone should know about this image. The second is the second most important thing. And the third is the third most important thing. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes per image. And this next one is a little bit more tricky. So again, just go with what you see, and then we'll discuss in detail maybe why I chose this first image. And the second image is kind of. Again, I was doing this late last night, so I was a little loopy. Okay, so this is your first image. It has a lot of colors, it has text. So this is a bit more complex that you're gonna try to describe. You have 2 more minutes for this photo. And I think in this instance, we're gonna give our descriptions after each one just because of the amount of time. Um, needed to share with each other. Okay, 30 more seconds. All right. Who wants to share? You need alt text for this one, yes. Who wants to share what they wrote? Okay. I have to open up the chat bigger to see this to see what everyone wrote. Okay. Art Nouveau poster of someone in a long golden gown made of flowers and text reading Fillmore. Illustration of a woman with wild curly hair and one nipple showing from her gown. A yellow, purple, and hot pink graphic design poster. No, you did that perfectly, Rebecca. Three-color print poster with fluid stretch text and graphic of a person in a dress promoting a performance. Okay, poster for a concert by Howling Wolf in San Francisco at the Fillmore, April 14th through 16th. Woman with curly hair and a full-length gown, the skirt of which is made up of flowers and text. Vibrant and vintage-inspired color palette in jewel tones of gold, purple, and pink against a cream background. I love jewel tones. A colorful ticket of a model wearing a fancy dress for a Country Joe and the Fish Show in San Francisco. A vintage illustrated poster in 70s style with art filling an illustration of a woman in a fashion dress for a show starring Howling Wolf, Country Joe, and the Fish and Loading Zone at the Fillmore Auditorium on April 14th through 15th, 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. for $3. Sunday, April 16th, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. for $2. Ticket locations listed at the bottom. A vintage concert poster for a concert at the Fillmore, April 14th to 15th. It features an Art Deco illustration of a woman with the band names in the background. Event poster with purple illustration of a woman wearing a golden gown with flowers, words, dates, and times. The background has pink text that reads Howling Wall and gold text that reads Country Joe Visual Headlights Stimulation. The text reads Presented in San Francisco by Bill Graham. The text in the reads Fillmore, Friday to Saturday, April 14th through 15th. Yes, this is all very, very good. Some of you caught more detail than others, but that is perfectly fine. Okay, so I'm gonna read what I wrote for the first description. Illustrated purple person in a dress made of flowers and text stands amidst pink and yellow text abstracted into psychedelic forms. So I specifically chose to describe it as person, because don't know if it's a man or woman. Everyone has nipples, you know. A nipple showing doesn't mean it has to be a woman or, so person. The longer description is poster for, again, because I have more context of where this image comes from. Poster for a 1967 concert composed of three solid applications of three different colors on a white background, pink, purple, and mustard, a darker yellow. A simplified set of shapes in purple compose a person with hair that spirals out from their head and big lips. They wear a mustard dress made up of flowers and abstracted text that fills the outline reading Fillmore Auditorium, Friday, Saturday, April 14th to 15th, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Um, sorry, I can't scroll down. 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., $3. Sunday, April 16th, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., $2. A peace sign is in pink is strategically placed where the nipple would be. Behind the person, extremely vertically stretched, is in pink text reads Howlin' Wolf. Flowing from their left side in mustard and white text reading Country Joe loading zone in the fish. Along the top border in red outline, all caps on a mustard background is presented in San Francisco by Bill Graham, and the bottom border shows ticket listings in white on purple. Um, so mine is a lot longer and actually like gives you every single word that is in this flyer. So that's one I wanted to add this image specifically because I know I'm often posting flyers on um Instagram, and sometimes the flyer has text with words. Again, I did this very late at night, Tanya. I do a lot of my best work at late at night, much to my my sleep schedule's demise. Because it has text and a person with a screen reader may not be able to read all that text, and the text is actually very important information that the person looking at it needs to know. You might actually want to write down what it says in your image description. But Riley had a question: would the alt text image change on a person and where it's displayed? Like if it's being displayed at a gallery? Yes. If you're showing this purely as like an art piece, then yes, I would maybe just describe like the image, like the colors, the figure. But if you actually have an image where the information, the text is wanting to be conveyed, you should actually put that in your description. So this actually ties to another point. I ran an event planning workshop a couple years ago. I might do it again, but I went on a very long rant about posters and a lot of people's posters being too wordy. Because again, when you're sharing something online, you run into this problem. If you're sharing an image or if you're promoting an event online, like on social media, my advice is to let just the image be the image without perhaps any extra information, and then have the important details like the who, when, where, why in the caption, because that's where it'll get picked up by the screen reader. Having it all on the image itself will kind of force you to kind of repeat the information again. This is just my rule of thumb. You don't have to do that. But you know, that would just be my recommendation. I'm just going back to what people have said in case I missed it. Um, yeah, you didn't have time to include everything I was able to see. Yeah, no, that's fine. Thinking about how my students would probably say to run a reverse image search and copy down all the info. What do you mean by that, Rebecca?
Oh, hey, I'll just talk if it was easier. I
Yeah,
was
that's
just
fine.
thinking about, I've got English 100 students, so I've got it on the mind. But when we're all talking about, like, for something like this, that's like a known poster, like,
Mm,
like the date and like name of the artist and stuff would probably be on like a gallery website somewhere.
mm,
So I'm just thinking about how they would probably, I mean, they would probably put it into ChatGPT or something, and then
yeah.
ask for them to summarize it. I was saying also in the comments because I've had to do like social media alt text before. I have depended on like things like Instagram because their alt text feature like automatically pulls text out of a image, but you still have to like go back and edit it usually.
Yeah, some social media platforms do have generative AI, and for the most part, they're pretty good. So like I use a platform called Buffer to schedule. Oh wait, no, sorry, it's not Buffer that does it. It's actually Mailchimp. If I'm sending something in Mailchimp will sometimes automatically generate the AI. Um, Most of the time it's pretty decent. Other times it's not, so then I have to go in and add to it. Um, but Yeah, so some social media platforms are a bit more advanced when it comes to that generative AI sort of thing. Ashley had a question of if the image being shared on a web page with all the other information is listed directly below, we don't need to include all of the information in alt text. If it is already being listed in the directly below, no, I don't believe you should. Again, it depends on the format. I'm trying to recall. I know I'm not sure if this is the case anymore, but I know a couple years ago, like when you add images into Instagram, you can it provides you with a place to put alt text. I remember learning a couple years ago that like the alt text wasn't necessarily being picked up on screen readers, so you still would have to put the description in the caption anyway. Um, so it really kind of depends. But yes, you you don't it really varies, but I think if the information is already kind of listed below, like what I would do in this instance is if I'm already sharing this information in the text below, I would just say an image promoting, I would have all the colors and things like that, and I would say promoting this event, this date, and the time. I may not put like all of the dates, like the locations and things that are listed below. Um, um, Sometimes I might I have them put a link so that they can go to another platform or another website that would then give them all the information. It really kind of depends. And Tanya says that not everyone who needs alt text has a screen reader. That is correct. So you kind of have to assume that again, this is kind of the idea of accessibility is that what is good for one person is good for all. So, putting the alt text in there in the actual body is good for everybody. And because you don't want to assume what people have access to in terms of making things accessible for themselves. And then Stephanie says that the Blackboard ally features can be robust in this area of proposed alt text, but you do need to check that it is accurate. Yeah. And an alt text ID is good when you have bad internet connection. That is also, yeah, because also the image might not upload all the way properly. So that's another thing. So I think again, these are not hard, fast rules. Like if you don't do this, I'm not gonna pop out of out of the your ceiling and sit and wag my finger at you saying you're doing bad. I think again, this is all like a learning process. There are some days where I get really descriptive, and there's other days where I don't, and because I just don't feel like writing a whole thing. It really just depends. But as long as you're making the effort, I think that really matters. But um uh yes, and the Riley says it's good for the purpose of universal design. I have really good eyesight, and it took me a minute to fully register all the information here. Yeah, that's correct. And again, this alt text is not only good for people with visual impairments, it's for cognitive as well. Like you might not, some people process information differently. Some people, there are certain fonts or text styles that might not be legible for certain people. Like I know a lot of people for a couple years ago were like making fun of Comic Sans being like a font for like little kids and for babies, but Comic Sans is actually generally considered a very good font for people who might have difficulty processing certain text because of the spacing and the height of the letters. It's generally good. Um, yeah, so alt text can also be helpful when someone lacks cultural context. Also good for AI and website crawlers to interpret. Yeah, so there's so many different pieces that you all are touching on, which again kind of emphasizes the importance of just talking and thinking about these things. I'm constantly thinking about accessibility all the time. As some of you um, in this group know, I've been working with you all for a very long time on these things. So it's constantly changing and evolving. Um,
Hi, this
Good.
is Dustin. Can I add something?
Yeah.
Um, I from what I've read or watched, I think the medium in which an image is being shown also matters. So, like, let's say if it's a picture on a website and it's like the banner image, but like the web, like one of the other folks was saying that the text content, the date time is in the actual text. So I think the best practice is not to have a screen reader repeat the same like date, time, locate, like repeat it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like in that case, if the text is already there,
Mm-hmm.
to just describe the image or the meaning of the image, and then not repeat. But I think in the social media platforms, I think it might still be necessary that all of the event details would show up in the caption for the
Yeah.
photo.
Yeah, again, not all web accessibility services are created equal. Some require you to provide a lot more information than others would. So it's really touch and go sometimes with that sort of thing. All right, I'm mindful of time, so let's I'm gonna skip this next image and go to the last writing exercise, but again, I'll show you what it looks like so you guys can kind of see what I was looking at late at night. Here's some sad Alvin and the Chipmunks after a party in their living room. So you can take time to look at that on your own. It's been rough, you guys. They had a rough time. So I'll tell you what I wrote for this. The first one is clay miniatures of sad, tired-looking Alvin and the Chipmunks in the living room after a party. So that's a basic one. And then the second one is clay miniatures of sad, tired-looking Alvin and Chipmunks in the living room after a party. Simon and Theodore sit in lounge chairs. Alvin stands. Bags of chips, beer cans, a champagne bottle, pizza, a guitar, and books are strewn about. So again, the first sentence straight to the point. The second one kind of gives you a more descriptive picture of the state in which they are existing in. Yes, they have hit rock bottom. I didn't realize Alvin has an ear piercing. Oh my gosh, the rebel. Did the ear piercing happen at the party? I don't know. It could have been. I know when I was in college, people would have tattoo parties in the dorm room, which is very scary. And I'm surprised that I mean, it could have been the level of hepatitis on campus could have gone up for all I know. But who knows? They could have also had a piercing party at this little shindig. Um, yeah, Dave's picture is in the background looking very he's very ashamed of the boys. Very wild party. Um, okay. So writing exercise number 4, we're actually going to go back to what someone earlier in the chat said that sometimes people will provide their own description for you to put. Um, and we'll go over why that is the case in a little bit. But I'm going to show you um, two headshots. I'm gonna explain the first two for you. I'm not gonna have you do the exercise for these next two photos, but then the photo after that, I'm gonna have you all do it again for the sake of time. Okay, so these two photos are actually the creators of Alt Texas poetry. The person on the left is Shannon Finnegan, and the person on the right is I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Apologies. Um, uh, it is Bojana and Coklyat. So on their respective websites, they provide a headshot of themselves. Shannon particularly provides multiple headshots of themselves, and they provide a link with the corresponding alt text to whatever image that you use because they are very particular about the way in which they are described. Because, for example, you might perceive someone as not being disabled, but they might be disabled, and they feel that is a core part of their identity. So you might they might include if they're disabled. You don't want to assume the gender of a person. You don't even want to assume the race of a person. So sometimes self-description can be a part of alt text. And again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, you kind of want to err on the side of being as neutral as possible, unless you have context about the like more background context about who the person is. So I'll read to you how Shannon describes themselves in the left photo. Me, a white person in a bright blue corduroy shirt and bleach blonde hair, looking directly at the camera, relaxed but not smiling. Taped to the wall behind me are various notes about projects, sketches, and things I like. Marissa captured me looking hot and cool and boyish. What a dream. Um, so you can see this person is even kind of referencing the person who took their photo and likes how they look in the photo, describing themselves as hot, cool, and boyish. They describe themselves as relaxed, not smiling. They describe themselves as um a white person as opposed to a white male or female or white man or woman. So this is how they choose to describe themselves in this photo. And they say looking directly at the camera, not necessarily looking directly at you in that sense. And then the image on the right is I'm a smiley white woman with chin length brunette bob. I'm 5 foot 3 inches and I am easing into my 40s and usually have my white cane with me when outside. Again, some of these things that she's using to describe herself, we can see she does have a chinless brunette bob. Um, you might perceive her as a white woman, and she's confirming yes, she's a white woman. You might not know how tall she is by looking at her photos. So she's describing how tall she is, giving a sense of her age, and also explaining, even though you can't see it in the photo, that they usually have a white cane with them when they are outside. So two different approaches to self-description. And so I think it would be a good practice for everyone to kind of just take a think as to how they would describe themselves in a picture to someone who may not know who they are. Like what are some important identifiers about yourself that you think that you might include in a self-description of yourself? If you want to share either in the chat or out loud. I'll go first. I would describe myself as a black woman, as a bald-headed black woman, with a nose piercing, glasses, and wearing a button-up shirt, sitting in a chair in an office, looking at the camera. That's how I would describe myself at this current moment. Um, Thank you for everyone sharing resources in the chat for the UMBC style guide. Okay, we have a middle-aged white woman with reddish brown hair and brown eyes. Okay. Okay, some people seem to not necessarily be comfortable with self-description. That's okay. We'll do the exercise with this next photo. Um, People want to take a minute to look at this photo and come up with a description of what you see in the image. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks. Again, I'll share the recording with everyone and the all the information. I'll be sure to send an email to everyone who has attended. Okay, do people want to share their description about this image and what they wrote? Okay, a man in a suit playing the saxophone. Black man in a suit and tie playing the saxophone, accompanied by another instrumentalist. Unclear, but looks like there's a pianist behind. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the pianist or not, but yes. I think just describing him as another instrumentalist would cover your basis. Well-dressed man in a suit and tie playing a saxophone looking at a music stand. Okay. So I have two descriptions for this. The first one is just a man plays a tenor saxophone. The second one I have is a medium dark-skinned black man stands in front of a music stand in a pinstripe suit and a striped pink tie. His cheeks are puffed up as he blows into the tenor saxophone that he holds with both hands as he presses his keys. So yeah, some of you are, yeah, so this is actually really good. So this exercise in particular is kind of pointing out the comfortability that some of us have in describing and how we describe ourselves versus describing someone else. So like some people didn't describe the person's race, some people did. Um and it's also important to think about ways in which your identity or your politics impact how you approach descriptions, not only of yourself but of other people. And in disability spaces, people are often asked to self-describe themselves. So that's something that folks in those spaces are used to doing, for good and for bad. So that's something that I suggest we all think about as well. Um, the benefits of this kind of self-description is that it gives people the agency over the language that is used in relation to themselves, and so they control the information that's shared. Um, but another downside is that people unfamiliar with image description may have difficulties with self-describing. And sometimes people won't describe parts of their identity due to power structures. So for example, not all the time, but sometimes white people won't describe themselves as white. They'll just describe themselves as a person. Um, so where some people generally marginalized people will tend to actually to identify the category in which they're marginalized more often than people who are white. Again, it all has to do with personal politics and preference and how you view yourself. But describing yourself and other people will often require you to like ongoing thought and reevaluation of yourself and accountability. Yes, Tanya, very correct. We're very aware of how we're perceived. Um, and so we want to be sure that we control the narrative as best we can. Um, so that's the last exercise. That's the end of the presentation. Um, I know it's a lot. Again, I encourage you all to practice. on your own spare time. You can practice with your colleagues in your office. It can be really fun. I hope that you all see how fun it can be and how enjoyable it can be. Um, yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, Alvin and the Chipmunks. Um, yeah, I think it's easier to describe an image than what you look like in a current moment. That is very correct. So yeah, I hope that you all learned a lot from this. And if you have any suggestions for things that maybe I could adjust or things that you maybe want to learn more about, feel free to email me. I'm happy to make adjustments as needed. Like I said, I really want people to know that alt text isn't scary. And I think it can actually be beneficial outside of just like website accessibility. So thank you all. And I hope you all had a very good weekend.